welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, well, it takes us right back into an Athenian prison cell. We're looking at the final hours of one of history's most foundational thinkers.
We're diving deep into Plato's Crito.
Exactly. Focusing on that incredibly high-stakes confrontation, the moral, the philosophical, the legal reasoning behind Socrates' choice, his refusal to escape death.
It's an amazing piece of writing. It really puts you there. The scene is just so vivid. It's dawn. Socrates is sleeping peacefully, somehow waiting for execution.
While his friend Crito is practically frantic.
Completely frantic. He showed up probably hours ago with this whole escape plan worked out. It's funded. It seems foolproof.
And that contrast is the first thing that hits you, isn't it? Crito is just consumed by panic, by fear. Yet, he tells Socrates he's been watching him, wondering at your peaceful slumbers.
Yeah, he mentions Socrates' calmness of temperament, how he's always admired it. But seeing him face this disaster with such ease, such cheerfulness almost, it's astounding.
The man about to die is the calmest one there.
And that calmness, that composure, it's really the opening philosophical move, you could say. It signals right away that Socrates is playing by a different set of rules, a different value system than Crito.
Crito's thinking survival, reputation, what everyone else will say.
Exactly, worldly consequences. But Socrates, his focus is internal. It's the state of his soul, the consistency of his entire life's philosophy.
So the dialogue immediately throws this massive question at us. When, if ever, is it okay to break the law?
Especially a law that's clearly being applied unjustly, fatally to you. Socrates basically frames it as this choice. Personal safety, what the many think, versus this unwavering commitment to reason, to the moral principles he's established.
He seems to be saying the quality of your life isn't about how long it is,
but about how justly you live it. The quality of the choices you make right up until the end.
Okay, so let's get into Crito's side first. His urgency is just. You feel it coming off the page. There's this ticking clock.
Absolutely palpable. He's waited for Socrates to wake up, and the news is terrible. The sacred ship from Delos, its return, signals the end of the moratorium on executions. It's expected back today.
He says people coming from Sunium saw it there, so the conclusion is stark.
Brutally final. He tells him, tomorrow, Socrates, will be the last day of your life.
No more time for discussion, Crito thinks. Time to act.
But Socrates, in typical fashion, isn't rushed. He pauses, mentions the strange vision he had. Almost irritates Crito, you sense.
The woman in white.
Yeah, fair and comely, clothed in white raiment, quoting Homer. The third day hence to Phthia shalt thou go.
Phthia, Achilles' home. It's such a striking image. Is it meant literally, like a delay, or is it symbolic?
Could be either. Maybe a hint of a reprieve, maybe Socrates aligning himself with that heroic, tragic fate. But whatever it means, Crito isn't interested in visions right now.
No, he's focused on the immediate disaster if Socrates doesn't escape. And his first big worry is, surprisingly, about reputation, his own, and that of Socrates' other friends.
Right, and this tells you so much about Crito's world, the Athenian social code. He's terrified of what the many, the public, will think.
They'll assume the friends were cheap, right?
Yeah.
That they wouldn't spend the money to save him.
Precisely. He's convinced people will say they valued their wealth more than their friend. He says the many will not be persuaded that I wanted you to escape and that you refused.
So the public shame, the hit to their honor, feels like a worse disgrace to Crito than even Socrates' death.
It really does. It shows how much that external judgment matters to him. Their courage, their loyalty, it's all measured by public perception.
So he tries to sweep away any practical barriers. He tells Socrates, don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the danger to us.
My own means are ample, he says. And even if they weren't, others have chipped in. Simmias, Sebes, many others, they've brought money specifically for this.
The funds are there. The escape route is planned. Everything's ready.
All the practical stuff is handled. The only thing standing in the way is Socrates himself.
And then Crito shifts gears, doesn't he? He moves from reputation to a much heavier moral argument. Duty. Specifically, duty to his children.
Yes, this is the real emotional lever he tries to pull. He accuses Socrates of choosing the easier part, not the better and manlier. That's a serious charge.
Abandoning his sons.
Right.
Betraying the duty to raise them, educate them, leaving them, as he says, to take their chance.
And he really twists the knife, saying if they face the usual fate of orphans, there will be small thanks to you. It's basically calling him a coward hiding behind philosophy.
He even states it as a general rule. No man should bring children into the world who is unwilling to persevere to the end in their nurture and education.
For Crito, staying looks like giving up on that long, hard slog of parenthood, choosing martyrdom over responsibility.
So the message is clear. Stop thinking. Start moving. This very night, he says. The window is closing fast.
Crito's world is all about these tangible things: reputation, money, family ties, immediate consequences.
Okay, so Crito's laid out a pretty compelling case, hitting all the emotional and practical points. Money, reputation, family. How does Socrates respond?
He just calmly sets it all aside. He immediately shifts the whole conversation back to his home ground. Reason. Pure reason.
He says that's the only guide.
The only guide that matters. He tells Crito, unless you can show me other and better principles, I'm not going to be swayed by what the crowd thinks or by these emotional appeals, these hobgoblin terrors, as he calls them.
Hobgoblin terrors, like fear of death or public shame.
Exactly. Things used to scare children. And the first thing he does is dismantle the authority of the opinion of the many.
This is a recurring theme for him, isn't it?
Absolutely central. He reminds Crito of something they'd apparently agreed on long ago. We should only value the opinions of some people, the good ones, the wise ones, not the bad or the foolish.
But Crito had just argued that the many do matter because they hold the power of life and death. They condemned him.
Right. They can do the very greatest evil, Crito says, and Socrates' response is just devastatingly dismissive.
What does he say?
He says, basically, I wish they could do the greatest evil, because if they could do the greatest evil, they could also do the greatest good. And wouldn't that be wonderful?
But they can't do either.
No. He argues their actions are mostly random, driven by chance. They can't make someone wise or foolish. They can inflict pain, sure, or offer temporary advantages, but it's arbitrary.
So how does he justify listening only to the wise? He uses an analogy, right?
Yes, the famous athlete analogy. He asks Crito, imagine someone in training gymnastics. Should they listen to every single person's advice on diet, exercise, rest?
Or just the expert, the trainer, the physician?
Obviously, just the one expert who actually understands.
Okay, that makes sense for the body. You listen to the doctor or the coach.
And Socrates presses the point. The athlete has to eat, train, live according to what that one expert says, not what the ignorant masses think.
And if they don't, if they listen to the crowd,
then they suffer harm. What harm? Their body gets corrupted, weakened, destroyed by ignoring the expert knowledge. Crito agrees to this.
But then comes the leap.
Then comes the crucial Socratic move. He takes this physical analogy and applies it to something much higher. The soul, the inner self.
He asks, if a ruined body makes life not worth living, which Crito accepts, then how much less is life worth living if that higher part of us, the part concerned with justice and injustice, is corrupted?
This is the absolute bedrock of his ethics. This higher principle, as he calls it, is improved by justice and deteriorated by injustice.
And he gets Crito to agree that this part, whatever it is, the soul, moral consciousness, is far more honored than the physical body.
So the real danger isn't the hemlock that destroys the body. The real destruction, the real evil, is harming your own soul by committing an unjust act.
Like escaping, which he sees as unjust.
Exactly. The crowd, the many, they can kill your body, yes. But they can't touch that inner core, that principle of justice, unless you choose to betray it.
So we should only care about the opinion of the one man who has understanding, the voice of reason, the truth itself. Not what people think about money or reputation or even staying alive.
That's the argument. Physical survival is secondary to moral integrity.
But hang on. It feels like there's a bit of a jump there. Measuring physical health is one thing you can see, muscle, illness. But how do you measure the health of the soul? How do you even know who the one wise man is? It seems abstract compared to the very real consequence of death if he stays.
That's a fair challenge. Socrates would likely argue that the measure is consistency with rationally derived principles. He believes, through his method of dialogue, that he has already established what those principles are, what the wise man or reason itself dictates.
So acting unjustly is the harm, by definition.
Yes. Committing an injustice is the corruption of the soul. For him, escaping would be unjust breaking agreements, potentially harming the state, and therefore it would degrade the only part of him he considers truly valuable and enduring. The physical death is temporary. The self-inflicted moral wound is permanent. So having kind of brushed aside Crito's practical points about money, reputation, fear of death, Socrates really digs in. He insists they can't just toss out the principles they've agreed on over years of discussion just because things have gotten personally dire for him.
Right. He wants to stick to the logical framework they've built. No exceptions based on circumstances.
Exactly. Consistency is key. And he lays down these fundamental ethical premises, the non-negotiables that will guide his decision. The first one is incredibly stark.
the principle of non-injury.
Yes, just stated flatly. We are never intentionally to do wrong. Ever. Full stop.
And injustice, doing wrong, always harms the person doing it.
Always. He says it's invariably an evil and dishonor to him who acts unjustly. The focus is entirely on the moral quality of your own action, not what's done to you.
Okay, that's a high bar. And it leads directly to the second principle, which feels even more radical, especially for that time.
Definitely. The principle of non-retaliation.
Because the common wisdom, this sort of heroic code even, was about returning harm for harm, right? An eye for an eye, protecting your honor.
Absolutely. The morality of the many, as Socrates puts it, was often about rendering evil for evil. You strike me, I strike you back. That's seen as justice, or at least balance.
But Socrates rejects that completely.
Utterly. He argues that doing evil in return for evil is still doing evil, and since doing evil is the same as injuring someone, it's inherently unjust.
So, his conclusion.
We ought not to retaliate or render evil for evil to anyone, whatever evil we may have suffered from him. No revenge, no payback, even if you've been grievously wronged.
That sounds incredibly difficult, almost passive in the face of injustice. If the state wrongs you so badly, doesn't refusing to retaliate, like by escaping this unjust sentence, just let them get away with it. Doesn't it stop you from fighting back against tyranny?
That's the natural reaction, isn't it? But Socrates sees it differently. For him, the state has already committed an injustice by condemning him wrongly. His choice now is whether he will commit a second injustice in response.
By escaping.
Yes. He believes escaping would mean breaking laws and agreements, thereby injuring the state, which he'll later frame as apparent. Committing that second wrong, injuring his own soul through his own unjust act, is far worse in his eyes than suffering the initial injustice from others. His goal isn't winning a power struggle, it's maintaining his own moral purity.
He even admits how unusual this view is, right?
Oh, completely. He explicitly says this opinion has never been held and never will be held by any considerable number of persons. He knows he's basically alone in this thinking. There's no common ground between his view and the conventional one.
Which really emphasizes the third premise he relies on.
The supremacy of right action. If you accept that you must never do wrong and never return wrong for wrong, then what matters most isn't staying alive, but living rightly.
Not life, but a good life.
Exactly. A life that is just and honorable, lived according to virtue. That's the ultimate value, the thing he cannot compromise, even to save his skin.
So after laying all this groundwork, no intentional wrong, no retaliation, prioritize the good life, he boils the whole escape dilemma down to one single question.
Just one. Is escaping Athens without the city's permission consistent with these principles? Does it count as doing wrong, as retaliation, as choosing mere life over a good life? And since Crito really has no answer to these fundamental principles, Socrates makes this incredible rhetorical leap. He moves from the abstract ethics to civic obligation by personifying the laws and the government of Athens.
Bringing the laws to life, that's quite a move.
It's brilliant. He imagines them confronting him, interrogating him about his potential escape. It shifts the perspective entirely.
Well, they ask him.
They say, tell us, Socrates, what are you about? Are you going by an act of yours to overturn us, the laws, and the whole state as far as in you lies?
So escaping isn't just a personal choice anymore. It's an attack on the entire system.
That's their argument. They claim the state can't survive if individual citizens feel free to just ignore legal judgments they disagree with. It leads to anarchy.
And how do they establish their authority over him?
They position themselves as his creators, his nurturers, like parents. They regulated his parents' marriage, his upbringing, his education. Therefore, he is their child and slave. That's the term they use. He's not on equal terms with the laws.
Slave. That sounds harsh, especially in Athens, the birthplace of democracy.
It's intentionally provocative. It's not about literal slavery, but about a kind of philosophical debt, an inescapable obligation. The argument is that the state provides the essential framework, security, education, order that makes a civilized life, even a philosophical life like his, possible.
So the debt to the state outweighs even family ties.
Far outweighs them, according to the laws. They claim the country and its laws are more to be valued and higher and holier far than mother or father or any ancestor. Their commands must be obeyed. If they punish, you undo it silently.
Wow, that's an extreme level of deference. But they do offer one way out, don't they? Something about choice.
Yes, and this is crucial for the idea of a contract. They point out that Athenian law gave every citizen, once they came of age and observed how the city worked, the right to leave. If you didn't like the laws or the city, you could take your property and go elsewhere, no penalty.
And Socrates never left.
Never. For 70 years he stayed. He saw how justice was administered, how the city functioned. By choosing to remain, the laws argue, he has entered into an implied contract that he will do as we command him.
He implicitly agreed to the rules by staying and benefiting from the system.
Exactly. He had decades to leave if he disagreed fundamentally. His staying was a tacit endorsement.
And the laws really use his own life choices against him here.
They do. They say he, more than anyone, affirmed this contract because he almost never left Athens. Except for military service or one trip to the Isthmian Games, he stayed put. He clearly preferred Athens.
He even chose death over exile at his trial.
The ultimate contradiction they throw at him. He had the option of exile then, a legal way out, and rejected it as unworthy. But now he's contemplating sneaking away like a miserable slave.
Breaking the very agreement he implicitly made and reaffirmed at the trial.
An agreement made freely, at your leisure, they remind him, not in any haste or under any compulsion or deception. He knew the terms.
And Crito. He can't argue with this.
He seems completely stunned by this personification. He just has to concede, there is no help, Socrates. The laws have dismantled every argument Crito made.
So disobeying now by escaping would be wrong on multiple levels.
Thrice wrong, the laws say. 1, disobeying his parents, the laws. 2, disobeying those who educated him, the laws again. And 3, the big one, breaking his explicit agreement to either obey their commands or persuade them that they are wrong.
Ah, that's the crucial alternative. Persuade or obey.
Right. He had the chance to persuade the court and failed. Now, the laws argue his only just options according to their agreement are obedience, accepting the sentence, or somehow still persuading the state it's wrong, not running away from the consequence. Flight violates the contract entirely.
So the laws have laid out the moral and contractual reasons why Socrates must stay. But they don't stop there, do they? They also paint a pretty grim picture of what would actually happen if he did listen to Crito and escape.
Yes, they move from the principled arguments back to the practical consequences, but this time showing how escape would backfire horribly, essentially proving Crito's plan is not only wrong, but also destructive.
Starting with the friends Crito is trying to protect.
Exactly. The laws warn that Crito and the others who helped him escape would face severe punishment. Exile, loss of citizenship, confiscation of property, they'd become outlaws for helping an enemy of the state.
So Crito's plan would harm the very people he wants to shield.
Precisely. But the consequences for Socrates himself are painted as even worse, striking at the core of his identity as a philosopher. Well, imagine him arriving in a well-governed city, somewhere like Thebes or Megara, cities known for respecting law and order. How would he be received?
Not well, presumably.
As an enemy, the laws say, a subverter of the laws. Anyone who values stability and justice in those cities would view him with suspicion, as someone who puts his own survival above the legal framework that holds society together.
So his reputation, the very thing Crito was worried about saving, would be ruined, but in a much deeper, more philosophical way.
Absolutely. And worse, his escape would actually validate the original charges against him.
How could it do that? The charges were unjust.
Because the accusers said he corrupted the youth. The laws argue, if you're willing to corrupt the laws themselves by defying a legal judgment, aren't you likely to be a corrupting influence on impressionable young people too?
So a corrupter of the laws is more than likely to be corrupter of the young. His actions would make the original verdict look plausible after all.
He would, in effect, confirm the Athenians' judgment by his own behavior. He'd become the lawless figure they accused him of being.
What about fleeing somewhere less structured? Crito mentioned friends in Thessaly.
The laws address that too, and it's possibly the most damning scenario. They warn he'd arrive in Thessaly, a place known for disorder, and what kind of life would he live?
Not a philosophical one, I gather.
Far from it. He'd live as the flatterer of all men and the servant of all men, basically sucking up to powerful people, maybe telling amusing stories about his escape, just trying to get a dinner. A life of utter degradation.
Where would his fine sentiments about justice and virtue be then?
Exactly the question the laws pose. It would be a complete betrayal of everything he stood for, trading philosophical integrity for basic survival and maybe some cheap entertainment value in a chaotic place.
And the children. Crito's big emotional point.
The laws turn that argument completely on its head, too. They ask, would taking his children to Thessaly really be good for them? They'd lose their Athenian citizenship, their connection to Athenian culture and education.
So dragging them into exile would harm them more.
That's the implication. And furthermore, if his friends in Athens are truly his friends, won't they care for his children whether Socrates is alive in Thessaly or dead in Athens? Perhaps even better if the children remain Athenian citizens.
It seems the laws have an answer for everything Crito proposed.
They do, and they conclude this section with that powerful final injunction. It really sums up the Socratic ethic.
Which is?
Think not of life and children first, and of justice afterwards. Put justice first, always. Do that, they say, so you can be justified before the princes of the world below.
Thinking about the afterlife as well.
Yes, they frame the choice starkly. If he dies now, accepting the verdict, he goes to the underworld as an innocent victim, a sufferer and not a doer of evil, a victim not of the laws but of men. He'll be welcomed.
But if he escapes?
Then he arrives having actively done wrong, returned evil for evil, broken his agreements. The laws in the world below will see him as an enemy, someone who tried to destroy their earthly counterparts. His eternal fate hangs in the balance, too. #outro.
And after that incredibly powerful speech from the personified laws of Athens, Socrates basically says, that's it. That's the sound he hears.
Yeah, it's an amazing closing image. He tells Crito that the voice in the laws is humming in my ears like the sound of the flute in the ears of the mystic.
That voice, I say, is humming in my ears and prevents me from hearing any other. It's like he's under a spell, but the spell is cast by reason itself, by the force of the argument.
And Crito, after all his efforts, the practical plans, the emotional appeals about friendship, reputation, children, he's just left with nothing.
He simply says, I have nothing to say, Socrates.
Completely silenced. The tension we started with between survival and principle is resolved, not through finding some middle ground, but through Socrates' absolute unwavering commitment to his philosophical convictions.
Which in this case meant seeing his duty not just to himself or his friends, but to this implied contract with the state that raised him, even when that state was condemning him unjustly.
Exactly. His primary duty was to his own reasoned principles, and those principles demanded he uphold his end of the bargain with Athens right to the very end.
So, if we boil down the core argument we've explored today, for Socrates, this rational principle that you must never intentionally do wrong and never retaliate it outweighs everything else. Fear of death, love for his family, what other people think, none of it matters as much.
The good life, the just life, that's the only valid goal. And achieving that meant adhering to the laws of the community he freely chose to live in his entire life, even when those laws turned against him. It's a powerful statement about philosophy not just being abstract thought, but a guide to action, even when the cost is ultimate.
It shows this profound, almost extreme commitment to the rule of law, but importantly, a rule of law grounded in the citizen's rational choice to be part of that system.
Yes, the idea that by accepting the benefits being born there, educated there, protected there, and crucially, having the freedom to leave you, incur an almost unbreakable ethical duty to obey. To break that is to undermine the very possibility of an ordered, just society where philosophy can even happen.
Which leaves us with a really challenging question, I think, especially for anyone thinking about civil disobedience or principled resistance today. The laws gave Socrates that one alternative to simple obedience, convincing the laws that our commands are wrong. He didn't or couldn't pursue that further after his trial.
Right. Persuade or obey.
So, if we accept that the state provides the framework for our lives, for our flourishing, as Socrates seems to argue, what does it actually take to satisfy that condition? What must a citizen do? What risks must they take? What does convincing the laws really entail before they can ethically justify choosing disobedience? How high is that bar for persuasion before resistance becomes the only just option? That feels like the lingering question Crito leaves.